And what's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Historic Hot Laps. I'm your host, Alex Daniels. We're a little behind this week, some personal matters, some things going on, but we definitely have a lot to talk about. So we're going to kick it off with the biggest thing now with the NASCAR. Spotlight isn't just on the racetrack, it's on the courtroom this week. Two of NASCAR's highest profile teams, 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports, have taken their fight to the federal courthouse, suing NASCAR under the antitrust laws. What's unfolding could reshape how the sport is run, who gets to race, and who survives. So I'm going to walk you through a full history leading up to this trial, why it matters, and with the new developments from the last 5 days. So what's happening in court now? Well, this isn't just a fight between teams, it's a fight over the future of stock car racing. So let's kick it off with a backstory. The charter system, which was established in NASCAR in 2016, has operated basically under charter functions like franchise licensing, guaranteeing cars entry into every cup race, giving teams stability, access, and a share of payouts. Over time, charters have become tradable assets. Teams could buy or sell charters, planning long-term entries and growth among themselves and in the series. But along with that came restrictive agreements, supply restrictions, revenue sharing formulas, contract terms, and limited team autonomy. So that structure became controversial, particularly for teams trying to expand or operate multi-cars under tight budgets. 2311 Racing, co-owned by a major public figure and veteran Cup driver, entered the Cup Series with ambition expanding by acquiring multiple charters. If you don't know, 2311 Racing is co-owned by a few different guys, but the main characters being Michael Jordan, the NBA All-Star, and multi-time race winner, but yet to secure champion, Denny Hamlin. So Front Row Motorsports, likewise, they also expanded its operations, obtaining additional charters as recent as 2024. That team is owned by several business groups, but we'll start name dropping here shortly. So, as the 2025 charter agreement drew near, teams negotiated with NASCAR, but 2311 and FRM, Front Row Motorsports, rejected the final offer, arguing that the terms presented unacceptable financial risk, overly restrictive conditions, and long-term uncertainty. In short, they saw no path from viability under the deal as it was presented. On October 2nd, 2024, 2311 Racing and FRM filed a federal antitrust lawsuit against NASCAR and its leadership. They argued that the charter system and related business practices amounted to monopolistic anti-competitive behavior under the Sherman Act. As part of their legal strategy, the team sought a preliminary injunction to allow them to continue racing as chartered teams through the 2025 season. Essentially, this was to preserve the rights and financial stability while litigation moved forward. That injunction was temporarily granted in December of 2024, but on June 5th, 2025, the 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals vacated that injunction. That meant 2311 and FRM lost their charter status. They would have to run as open teams going forward if NASCAR didn't relent. The loss of guaranteed entry, revenue sharing, and charter protections put the teams in a precarious position. Still, they pressed forward by late October 2025. The full text of the 2025 charter agreement was unsealed as part of the public court record. That move lifted the veil on previously confidential contract terms. With no settlement reached, the negotiations apparently broken down. The case moved to trial beginning this last week on December 1st. That brings us to today. A courtroom, a jury, a battle is not just over contracts, but over control of NASCAR's business model itself. So here's what's happened this week going into the trial. Obviously, you've got these teams fighting for their status. And even more backstory, we could go into driver contracts and how charter systems affect that as well. They've got some great drivers on their lineup and up-and-comers, but a lot of those guys are contracted only if they're chartered teams. So many things can happen here, and that's part of the argument. The jury trial began December 1st in Charlotte, North Carolina. Over the last 5 days, the courtroom has been seeing open statements, explosive testimony, cross-exams, and tension rising with every single witness. Day one, the trial opened with jury selection. Potential jurors were carefully vetted. Some were dismissed after emitting strong opinions about NASCAR or some familiarity with the parties involved, including co-owners of 2311 Racing. Obviously, having a profile like Michael Jordan in the courtroom, you're going to have opinions, right? So this pointed to how public and controversial the case already is. Once the jury was seated, opening statements began. The plaintiffs of 2311 and FRM laid out their central claim that NASCAR's charter system and business practices amount to a monopolistic, exclusionary structure that unfairly forces teams to take it or leave it deal, suppressing competition and financial viability for non-compliant teams. NASCAR's defense countered by painting the charter system as an industry standard, long-standing structure that provides stability, guaranteed starts, and a value to the charter teams. They argued the disagreement by 2311 and FRM is a business negotiation turned legal. The presiding judge, Kenneth D. Bell, issued a warning to both sides about the pace and the tone of the trial so far, instructing them to avoid inflammatory rhetoric and focus on facts and documents. That set a strict tone of discipline over the proceedings. Day one was more about the framing of everything, a high-stakes standoff over rules, money, and history, with the jury selection. That puts us into day two, which was the first major testimony. 2311 side going first, as they are the ones who initiated the lawsuit. First witness, none other than Denny Hamlin, 2311 co-owner and longtime Cup Series driver. He delivered a sobering account of the financial realities of running a Cup car. On record, he estimated it costs roughly $20 million per season to field a single Cup car across 38 races, not including overhead salaries or other organizational costs. Hamilton also disclosed that 2311 paid $46.2 million to acquire 3 Cup Series charters, underlying how much real capital is at stake here and how deep their investment ran. On the stand, Hamlin didn't mince words. He said signing the 2025 charter under NASCAR's proposed terms would have been like signing a death certificate for teams like his. In cross-exam, NASCAR's attorneys attempted to highlight past public statements Hamlin made expressing support for NASCAR, suggesting inconsistency or undermining in his credibility. Hamlin responded with pointed clarity. Positivity often meant business as usual, but behind the scenes, the financial pressure told a different story. By the end of day two, the courtroom and the jury had a stark picture of what teams are risking, real money, real commitment, and what could be a modern gamble on their future. This brings us to day three. Day three's attention turned to internal communications and contract details. Scott Prime, who's NASCAR's senior executive responsible for strategy, testified on day three. Under questioning by plaintiff's lead counsel Jeffrey Kessler, Prime was asked pointedly about what's been referred to as the goodwill provision in the charter agreement. Language critics call a non-compete clause. Under that clause, if a team leaves NASCAR or gives up a charter, they would be restricted from competing in a rival series or using non-NASCAR-approved suppliers for a set period. Plaintiffs argue such clauses strangled the competition. Prime's answer was telling. He described the charter system as a stepping stone for the industry, a transformation that allows NASCAR to grow. He insisted the system provided value, stability, and long-term growth for the sport. Later, the first testimony from FRM's side, Mr. Bob Jenkins, who is the owner of Front Row Motorsports, took place. Jenkins recounted decades of struggle at the midfield and back of the pack, saying that despite charters, his team never turned a meaningful profit. He described operating costs, limited sponsor opportunities, and mounting pressure under the existing charter and supplier model. On cross-examination, NASCAR's attorney challenged Jenkins' financial claims and questioned the transparency of his accounting. They also pressed on an attempted charter sale and merger between FRM and 2311 years earlier. I believe that was in 2023, if I remember right, suggesting that the collaboration between the two teams began before the current dispute, possibly weakening their independence claims. Day 3 painted a deeper picture. This isn't just about cost, it's about control, supply chain restrictions, and structural design. This puts us on to day 4, which was NASCAR's pushback day, basically. On day 4, testimony continued. Jenkins wrapped up his cross-examination. Then NASCAR's president, Steve O'Donnell, took the stand to defend the charter system, the supplier controls, and the overall business model, arguing that the charters do deliver value, stability, and long-term growth opportunities for teams. NASCAR's legal team also sought to challenge the notion that the charter framework constituted abuse, framing it instead as a standard for series like NASCAR where guaranteed entries, stable scheduling, and centralized regulations support the sports ecosystem. But the plaintiffs, through their attorney Kessler, pushed back hard, highlighting internal emails and memos showing dissatisfaction among teams with NASCAR's leadership, particularly at the top. They argued the system wasn't built to foster competition, but to protect a closed network of benefit for certain stakeholders. By late day 4, presiding Judge Bell admonished both sides for slow pace and evasive answers, warning that jury's patience was being tested. He signaled he might begin pressing answers himself if witnesses didn't cooperate, a clear indicator that frustration is growing with sidestepping or delaying tactics. So day 4 was a battle for narrative control, structure versus fairness, stability versus competition, business as usual versus systematic reform. Now, Friday, the final day of the first week of the trial, which is scheduled for 2 weeks, so they're really hoping that they can get it done in that time. A federal court trial timeline is pretty intense. They were told they're not moving fast enough, that they need to speed things up. So we'll see how the second week goes. But let's continue on with day 5. This is a big move, celebrity testimony, emotional appeal, and strategic stakes in mind. So, biggest headline and possibly the most pivotal moment yet came when Michael Jordan, the co-owner of 23XI Racing, took the stand. It was a packed courtroom. His presence alone drew media attention and set a somber tone. Jordan spoke directly and emotionally. He said he had been a lifelong fan of stock car racing. Being that he grew up in North Carolina, it's easy to believe, right? That's the home and the mecca of it, but felt forced to sue NASCAR because NASCAR's current business model shortchanges teams and their drivers, prioritizing control over fairness. He described being in meetings with longtime owners who had been browbeaten for so many years, unable to affect meaningful change. He criticized NASCAR's 2024 charter extension, delivered under a rigid 6-hour ultimatum, as unfair and rushed, arguing the process allowed no real negotiation or meaningful input from the teams like his. According to Jordan, the ultimatum revealed how little regard NASCAR has for team viability and long-term fairness. Jordan also compared NASCAR's revenue sharing and business model to that of other major leagues like the NBA, implying that teams deserve the kind of equality and partnership and respect seen in other sports. He called for an ecosystem rooted in fairness, not compulsion. On the stand, Jordan's testimony wasn't just financial or legal, it was deeply personal. His presence served as a powerful symbol. This isn't purely about dollars, but about respect, voice, and the future of the sport. For many teams and fans, the personal appeal could sway how the jury and the public view what's at stake. Day 5 may be a turning point. Jordan, testifying publicly and emotionally, pushes the case beyond contracts and spreadsheets into values, fairness, and identity. So why the trial matters? The stakes are pretty huge, right? This court battle could be a turning point for motorsports. So here's what's at stake and what everyone should pay attention to going into the second week of the trial. A foundational challenge to the charter system. If plaintiffs succeed, the charter model, long considered the backbone of financial stability for NASCAR, could be dismantled or fundamentally restructured. That means guaranteed entries, long-term equity, and revenue sharing could all be up for renegotiation. Team viability, especially for smaller independent outfits, right now the cost and risk of running a Cup car are quite astronomical. If the charter system is ruled unlawful, previously excluded or underfunded teams may get a shot. But if the teams lose, it could accelerate the attrition, shrinking the field, or consolidating power even further. Precedent for sanctioning bodies in motorsports and beyond. If a major sanctioning body like NASCAR can successfully be challenged under an antitrust law, could embolden similar challenges across racing series globally. Closed ecosystems might no longer be a given. The unsealing of contracts for the transparency of this court, revenue sharing terms, internal memos, candidate admissions is already shedding some light of how racing works behind closed doors. That kind of exposure could influence sponsors, regulators, and fans, shifting the power dynamic away from centralized control. What competition should really look like? At its heart, this is what it's about, whether teams or partners or just tenants under an owner. Ruling for the plaintiffs could redefine the relationship between the sanctioning bodies and the teams going forward. This isn't just garage gossip, this is legal reckoning, and it could change stock car racing forever. So, here's what we need to watch next. Key flashpoints as trials progress. As we keep tracking this trial, here are critical items we want to watch. More high-profile testimony. More team owners and co-owners may follow Jordan's lead. Their voices, financial, emotional, historical, everything could weigh in heavily, right? Internal communications, memos, emails, financial records, those smoking gun documents could demonstrate intent, whether NASCAR knowingly maintained a closed exclusionary system or not. Economic expert analysis and damage estimates with expert witnesses will likely define the relevant market, show how pricing and contracts distort competition, and put dollar values on alleged harm. This case isn't just about the legal doctrine, though. How are the jury reactions going to be in their sentiment? It may come down to whether everyday people see this as an unfair system. The jury's impression could decide what fair business practice or monopoly abuse look like. Potential settlement or structural overhaul. Even before the verdict, pressure could mount from media sponsors and public opinion, pushing NASCAR to negotiate or overhaul the charter system. So, in closing, the courtroom is now part of the track. When 23XI and Front Row filed their lawsuit in 2024, they challenged more than the contract. They challenged the foundation of how stock car racing is organized, financed, and controlled in the United States. Now with the trial underway and evidence, financial, factual, emotional, it's all laid out there bare. We're seeing just how real the challenge is. One weekend, the stakes couldn't be higher. This isn't a side story. It may be the most important off-track event in NASCAR history, at least modern history for sure. Whatever happens, the ramifications will echo through the garages, the boardrooms, and the living rooms of fans across the country. And we're going to be there following every development, unpacking every document, and reporting what it all means, because this is more than just motorsports business. It's the future of the sport we love. Stay tuned, because this courtroom battle may end up rewriting the next decade of NASCAR. As always, please stick with us, like, share, subscribe. Follow us on all the socials, hit all the buttons, do all the stuff, and we'll keep you updated as the trial commences through the following week. All right, let's jump over to our recaps now. I know we're a little behind on this. We got the finale of Formula One coming up here in the next 48 hours, but big late season drama shook the championship this last weekend in Qatar, or Qatar, depending on how you're supposed to actually, I believe it's Qatar, but anyway, everything comes down to one last race. Here's what went down and why December's finale in Abu Dhabi just got a whole lot bigger. Max Verstappen took the win in Qatar, seizing a critical late season victory that keeps his title hopes alive. Oscar Piastri, starting from pole, finished P2, while Lando Norris ended up fourth after a questionable strategic call for the leading team. Because of those results, the points gap shrunk. Norris remains in the lead, but just 12 points ahead of Verstappen, with Piastri trailing by 16. All three drivers now heading to race with a shot at the crown. The 2025 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix will decide the world title, a rare three-way battle involving Norris, Verstappen, and Piastri. For Norris, the safe path is a podium finish, and that should seal it up for him. For Verstappen, it's simpler. He needs the win, and Norris needs to finish off the podium or low enough depending on where Piastri ends up. For Piastri, mathematically still alive, but the margin is very tight. He would likely need a win and rely on both rivals finishing poorly. Pressure on all three is enormous. All have had strong seasons, but only one leaves with the title, with just a few points separating them. Everything, strategy, reliability, nerves, will matter more than ever. This isn't just a two-driver duel with three credible contenders, each with the season wins and momentum. We're looking at one of the most open and unpredictable championship deciders in years. A single mistake or a brilliant strategic move could flip the title, and for fans, that means maximum excitement from the lights out to the checkered flag. My biggest thing with this is I really, really hope that we don't see some, I don't want to say backmarker, but lower level team mixed up in something, make a mistake, and take out, say, a Verstappen on the first lap or a Norris or whatever. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Like I said, it's coming up real soon. And then, again, we'll do like we did last year, and we'll do a recap show too for the Formula One season and maybe get a couple guests in, see what we can do. Let's jump over to the USAC Midget Series here for just a minute. Quick lowdown on this weekend's action at Ventura Raceway. Fourth running of the Turkey Night Grand Prix. Wild 98-lap main event. Corey Day scored the win. He took the lead for good on lap 75 and held off challengers the rest of the way. Finishing second was Logan Seavey and Buddy Kofoid rounding out the top three. The race featured 9 lead changes, which is the most at Turkey Night since the late 1970s. Despite finishing 15th due to a flat tire late in the race, Kenny McIntosh locked up his first ever USAC National Midget Championship. He's had a great season over there. This wasn't just any midget race. Turkey Night remains one of the most historic, prestigious short track events in American dirt racing. It is pretty awesome. And this year's 84th edition delivered drama, late race heroics, and a championship decided under pressure. Corey Day's victory cements him as a back-to-back winner at this storied event, and McIntosh's title caps off the season of consistency even when the night didn't go his way. Fans got a little bit of everything: speed, strategy, heartbreak, and redemption. Let's wrap it up with a little bit of news here real quick. From the world of Formula One, a major shakeup at Red Bull ahead of the 2026 season. Red Bull has officially confirmed its 2026 driver lineup, and there are some big changes. Max Verstappen is back in the number 1 seat. His new teammate will be 21-year-old Isaac Hadjar, promoted from the junior setup after a solid rookie season. That promotion means the departure of Yuki Tsunoda from the main seat. He's been moved to test and reserve driver role in 2026. Meanwhile, Red Bull's sister team, the Racing Bulls, is getting a fresh lineup too, with Liam Lawson remaining as the veteran. He'll be joined by promising 18-year-old rookie Arvid Lindblad, who steps up from Formula 2 to make his F1 debut. This is more than just a shuffle. 2026 brings a major change to Formula 1, new technical regulations, and notably the debut of the Red Bull Ford Powertrain's power unit with Red Bull. So that's a lot to say, but That debut is going to make a big difference, pairing youth with experience. Verstappen's season championship-winning talent and Hadjar's rookie energy shows Red Bull is doubling down on development. At the same time, giving Lindblad a seat at Racing Bulls reinforces their pipeline philosophy, keeping deep roots in junior development, even under increased pressure. For Tsunoda, this is a big moment. After 6 seasons with the Red Bull family, he's out of the main lineup. Red Bull's official statement thanked him for his contributions and reserved a place for him in the team's 2026 test and reserve ranks. The move raises immediate questions. Can Hadjar adapt quickly alongside Verstappen? I mean, he's not going to really outshine him, that's for sure. The new power unit and regulation shakeup, that'll balance the power for sure. And can the Racing Bulls give Lindblad a smooth enough entry that he can grow into be a contender? We know that second seat at the Racing Bulls is always a problem. But we're entering a fascinating and unpredictable chapter for Red Bull. With a power plant change in Formula One as a whole, stay tuned because 2026 it could be one of the most interesting years yet. Finally, to wrap up this episode, no history this week because we're doing the trial stuff, but we did have some news on IndyCar. Schumacher, yes, the former F1 and WEC driver, is headed to IndyCar in 2026. RLL officially announced Schumacher will drive their number 47 Honda full-time next season. Schumacher got his first taste of Indy machinery back in October when he tested RLL at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. That test evidently impressed, prompting the team to offer him a seat in 2026. Just 26 years old, Schumacher brings with him a resume that includes 43 starts in Formula One and recent experience racing LMDH prototypes in the World Endurance Championship. Now he'll trade the European paddocks for American oval street circuits and the high-stakes atmosphere of IndyCar. RLL says the 2026 lineup will include him alongside veteran Graham Rahal and rising talent Louis Foster. That move represents a major shakeup of the team and a bold new chapter for Schumacher, who says he's thrilled by the pure and direct racing style IndyCar offers. Expect him to begin preparing soon. RLL has already planned oval testing for him to help him get up to speed for the 2026 season, which kicks off next spring. Schumacher's move to RLL isn't just about changing series, it's a signal. A former Formula One name entering IndyCar adds a full global weight and could shake up how fans view the series. Definitely going to bring over some crossover fans. Buckle up because 2026 could be a pretty wild ride for RLL. And that'll close us out for today. We've got a lot going on, a lot of stuff. We know it's the holiday season. We appreciate you taking the time to listen. We really do. We're going to cover more of the NASCAR trial this upcoming episode this next week. Maybe do a midweek episode and then maybe do one later on. I don't know how we'll do it. We'll just see what time allows for it. But we do appreciate the likes, shares, subscribes, all that stuff. Hit all the buttons like we said. And join us next time for another episode of Historic Hot Laps. Until then, stay safe and thanks for tuning in.